when it comes to investing for saving tax, the most common source of information is the person that people have lunch with in the office. So it's like, in the month of February, who did you have lunch with maximum number of times in your office canteen is the person who's going to determine. You should be first asking, why am I investing? See, if you don't know where you are going and how far that place is, then how will you know which vehicle or which mode of transport to take and how fast to drive? There are multiple ways to go to heaven. You don't have to necessarily go your way or my way. And if somebody tells me that, there are not enough ideas in India to be able to generate alpha, I think it's a misunderstanding. It's not an accurate assessment of where we are in our journey. So to sum it up, I'll just tell you that you don't worry about the index capturing the market even before the market has captured the economy. We have a long journey to go. कुछ लोग चाय में बिस्किट डुबो के ही खाते हैं, तो क्या कर सकते हैं उसका?
Welcome to the next edition of This or That. This is Bhartendra Singh. I'm absolutely thrilled to have Aashish Sommaiya in the house. Ashish is CEO of WhiteOaks. He was previously CEO of Motilal AMC, where he scaled the business from 1,000 crore to 40,000 crore. He is an excellent orator, and we'll try and cover with him how to approach investing, how to navigate markets, his perspective on industry, and how the market will move, and we'll seek some inspiration from him. So I'm welcoming Ashish. We'll start with basic questions, and so first question that I have is that what I observe is people are stuck on wrong questions. कि SIP बंद करना है क्या? Should I invest in IPO? ये IPO अच्छा है क्या? 2025 में कौन सा अच्छा फंड है? Instead of asking कि मेरा risk tolerance क्या है, कि मेरे को what should be my goal? मेरा budget क्या होना चाहिए? So why are people stuck, and how can we flip this?
ये तो actually because since we have a business background, or like I see myself as a professional CEO, तो आप तो personal finance में पूछ रहे हैं, मैं तो कितना बड़ा companies है, कितना बड़ा organizations है, where people say that okay, we should do that, just because the market is doing it or the competitor is doing it. And instead of thinking what are my competencies, instead of thinking what I'm good at, instead of thinking what my customers want, people start by thinking what my peers are doing, what my competitors are doing, right? So same way, I think most people, instead of being internally driven, they are externally driven. And the same thing applies to your question on personal finance also, which is that instead of thinking that, which is the right fund for me, or which is the right product for me, or, what will suit my goals and my risk return framework, people are driven externally. Like say something as simple as say tax planning, right? Long back we had done one survey which said that when it comes to investing for saving tax, the most common source of information is the person that people have lunch with in the office, especially in so it's like in the month of February, who did you have lunch with maximum number of times in your office canteen is the person who's going to determine what you will buy to save tax. So I think I think it's true that people are very, very externally driven, and they try to figure out what others are doing, and then they try to envisage themselves in that position instead of thinking what is right for them. So yeah, this is perennial problem.
I was watching one interview of Devina Mehra yesterday, and she's saying that intellectually also when we know, but we eventually end up, making the same mistake. So I bring it down, forget finance.
Yeah.
सबको पता है junk food you shouldn't be eating, but they eat, right? So people are going to continue to make mistakes. There's nothing you can do then.
Yeah, I think you just see it's like this. There is a lot of value to repeating. Correct. So there is one trait. Say for example, my son is 5.5. If he wants me to do something, he says I want French fries. Example. So I'll say yes, okay, we'll order. Then he'll say, Papa, I want French fries. Okay, so you say yes, I will order. He'll again say I want French fries. Make sure it is with cheese. So when you're a kid, right? I mean, till the time you don't reach the counter, pay for it and order it, take it and put it in his hands and make him sit and eat. Till then, he is prone to telling you, I want French fries. Don't forget the ketchup. It should be with cheese. So when you are a kid, right, kids intuitively, for some reason, we may find it irritating. But when we were a kid, we were used to repeating. And when we were a kid, we didn't mind anybody repeating, right? Most things are learned by iteration when you're a kid. I'm not saying to a 40-year-old you have to repeat, but iterations are important. You have to buttress whatever information is given, right? So if you see, for example, the mutual fund industry is now, I think, for 10 years saying mutual fund sahi hai. Okay? It doesn't mean you do it for 1 month, 3 month, or 6 month and say, okay, no, people are grown-ups, they've understood, right? For example, we tell people that when you do an SIP, right, a slow start is a good start, meaning that if you're doing a long-term SIP, let's say you're doing an SIP for 10 years, correct? You don't want a situation that the moment you start contributing, the NAV just starts going up and the value starts going up. If you're doing an SIP for a long period, theoretically, what would I want? That for the first 9 years, nothing happens, and in the 10th year, the market goes up 10x, right? Because in the first 9 years, when the NAV doesn't move, I keep contributing. I'll keep getting units. I'll build a huge balance, and in the 10th year, it goes up 10x, right? That will make me maximum money. If I start investing now and in the first 2 years the market goes up 4 5, some crazy number, right? I mean, just exaggerating, but in the first couple of years it goes up some crazy number, and then in the, what will happen? The NAV is gone up, I collect less units, right? It's not going to do anything to my IRR over a period of time. So there are many of these things, which personal finance and people who are in that field, they have to keep repeating, keep iterating, keep saying the same things in different ways. I think there is a value to repetition, value to iteration. Kids understand it intuitively, and we practice it with kids also. But by the time we become grown-ups, we forget the power of anything which is iterative.
I intended to ask you this question much later, but since you spoke about mutual fund sahi hai, I think it's a good campaign. It's done well, and SIP's numbers have increased a lot. But I feel that people just understand SIP. Where the money is going, they still don't know. People. So, do you think there is a scope of something that industry or the campaign can do on this? Because one thing is clear, SIP lena hai sab everybody understand,
Yeah.
but they just don't understand where the money is going.
ऐसा
I mean,
हुआ था
not
मेरे
with
साथ.
everybody.
Yeah. No, I can relate to what you're saying. ऐसा हुआ है मेरे साथ. Once I was in Bhavnagar. This is not even now. I think it must have been 2015-16 sometime when the campaign had just started. But by then, SIP had already started becoming a big thing. So I was in Bhavnagar. I spoke for an hour, right? I spoke about investing in markets. I spoke about how equity markets work. I spoke about investor behavior, behavioral psychology. The whole thing. For 1 hour, I gave a detailed, talk. At the end of it, one guy stood up and said, ये सब बराबर है, लेकिन SIP कैसे होता है वो तो बताओ. So at the end of it, I had to say, bhai, I'm talking about equity. I'm talking about equity mutual funds. I'm talking about volatility. I'm talking about how to tide over behavioral issues. So for all of these only we do SIP in equity, right? So what happens is that people just know SIP, and SIP has become a word which is bigger than mutual fund.
Correct.
SIP has become a word which is bigger than equity. So you're right in pointing this out that somewhere people may have lost track. That why are we, you're talking about it, but people may have lost track of why are we doing it and where does the money actually go. That's possible. The other issue is also, communication, and all of us are part of it. But I'll tell you an example. Like, you've been in the mutual fund industry, so just think about it. Let us say you have invested in a particular asset management company, and say the scheme is called ABC. Okay. Now I challenge you: open your email box. Okay. Sift through all emails from that particular asset management company, or sift through all emails you receive from the asset management universe at large. What you are likely to find is that you will have an email for practically everything that happened except for the progress of the fund in which you invested.
True.
Right? So if I tell you that, go through your mailbox and get me the fact sheet only for the scheme in which you have invested, not the 150 schemes of that fund house. The scheme in which you have invested, I challenge you, I give you exactly 60 seconds, find me the fact sheet. Or I give you 5 minutes, find me the fact sheet. So what will happen is that, we communicate, every TER change, every new NFO, every new development, market went up, market went down, RBI has cut interest rates, Mr. Trump has announced tariffs. You will get an email notification and you will be able to find everything, but you will not be able to find the fact sheet of the scheme in which you have invested. So I think that is also a challenge. We communicate with people about everything, all and sundry, but we don't tell them specific. See, because we have to help people to build a relationship with their investment. If you do not communicate in a very pointed fashion, the only relationship that people will have with their investment is, once in a while they will see value has gone up, value has gone down, market has crashed, whatever. But only when people are repeatedly told about, look, this is the scheme in which we invested, this is the portfolio, this is how it has changed, this is the progress, this is how this portfolio is relevant for the current environment, this is now is a time when you should consider investing more, now is a time when we have outbeaten all past averages, so take some money off the table. I think if we do, you need contiguous communication about the product in which the person has invested.
Correct.
But we have contiguous communication about everything other than the fund where that person has invested. And I think people not having a long history or a long series of interactions with a specific investment that they made, I think that's a big problem.
And I wonder how many people actually read fact sheets before investing or after investing.
Yeah, I mean, how will they read if they can't find what they should be reading, right? I mean, if the fund in which you invested is on page number 119 of a PDF file, which has 160 pages, for example, right? And how will you ever reach page number 119? And within that also, how will you find exactly what you should be looking for? Right. So I always tell my colleagues that, for God's sake, if a person has invested, send them a product specific email only for if a person has invested in 3 of our products, I don't mind them getting 3 separate emails for each of those products. But for God's sake, write to them about where they have invested. Don't write to them about everything other than key personnel change, TER change, and like I told you, macroeconomics.
Some of them are
and
compliance
stuff.
requirement also, unfortunately. But
Yeah, so see, even if you send a TER change, it's only for the scheme in which you have invested. It's fine. But if you are going to get some website link which talks about a zillion
Everything.
links, so what I feel is that we all have to work hard so that people form a relationship with that specific investment and not with the they should not get like a basket full of information.
So I'll go back to the basic investing. So let's talk about investing journey, and somebody has to start. What's the right approach to start investments? Somebody is starting this first investment.
Yeah.
How should they approach their investments? What should be the right questions they should be asking?
Yeah, I mean, you made a brilliant point right at the onset. I mean, you should be first asking, why am I investing? What is it that I'm trying to see? If you don't know where you are going and how far that place is, then how will you know which vehicle or which mode of transport to take and how fast to drive, right? It's not, you would never do that, right? I mean, if you know you want to go to Pune and you're okay to reach in the next 4-5 hours, right? Then you will start driving, take a break in Lonavala, maybe have vada pav or something, right? I mean, you will know. But if you just don't know where you're going and how far, when you want to reach, then how will you start driving? So I think that's as basic as that. I think that's the first thing people need to know. The second thing is obviously mode of transport, or where you will invest will also depend. I mean, some people would love to go all the way to Ladakh on a Royal Enfield, and some people would say that even for Pune I will take a Vande Bharat maybe, correct? So there is somebody who wants to go to Ladakh on a bike, and there is somebody who wants to, even for Pune they want to take a train. They will never go by car. So people have preferences, right? I mean, it's a product of their mindset that I want to go there and I want to reach in this much time, and I have particular format of what kind of journey I prefer, correct? So like I once had a colleague who would do his absolute best to avoid flying. I mean, colleague meaning I was his boss, and if I said that, okay, we are going to have a sales meet and I want all the zonal heads to come to Mumbai, he would say, साहब 2 दिन पहले बता देना, हाँ मतलब वो गीतांजलि एक्सप्रेस में आएगा कलकत्ता से. I mean, it's true story. Then, like now, for example, I have a colleague who's based in Hyderabad. And if he has to plan a tour, he loves driving. I mean, he would, if he had meetings in Chandigarh on Monday, he would ensure that Friday evening or Saturday morning he'll start driving, but he would love to drive. So what I'm saying is that if you want to start investing, you should be very clear why you are investing, where you are headed, what do you want that money to do for you. Because otherwise what people do is, like I said, they're driven by the
Whatever
external
external
factors.
factors.
My friend is made money in FNO, and my friend made money in an IPO and sold it just on listing, and my other friend is boring, he just does SIPs. So people are, they look at these kinds of things. I think you have to be internally clear what you're doing.
So there are so many options, equity, mutual fund, FD, crypto, everything is there. So somebody starting, what should be the base where he should start? Now the question would be, I have to understand who the person is, what is
Yeah.
his risk profile and everything. But on an average, a young person starting, what should be the base? Like, let's say he has a decent income.
Yeah, base meaning where to start, you're
Yeah,
saying.
ways to start.
See, if you ask me, and I'm colored by my own profession and my thought process, and I'm very, very conscious that people of my industry with my age profile are very preachy. So, and I know that today's 20-year-olds, you should not be preaching anything to them. But I would say two, three things. So let me come to the mutual fund bit, which is my job maybe later. But see, a lot of people, we keep preaching that you should do SIP and you should do mutual funds. So that's the obvious thing. Let's forget that for a moment. A lot of people want to start investing in equity, correct? So I always tell youngsters, a lot of people ask me that, I want to invest in equity, where should I start? So I ask them that, what is your affinity circle? Like, what does your dad do? Which sector or which company are you employed with? So let's take an example that I'm not CEO of an asset management company, but say that I have worked in an asset management industry, right? Say a couple of jobs in the asset management industry, or let's say it's my first job in asset management industry, and I say that where should I start investing, but I'll do direct equity. So if I am from the asset management industry and I want to start investing directly into stocks, my first port of call should be to invest in asset management industry stocks because there are 4 or 5 of them listed. Now, I may be having 1 year work experience and I may not be having the best business insights. But even if I don't have the best business insights, if I want to start direct equity investing, which is a sector or segment or which is a bunch of companies where I at least have a probability of success that okay, I will start studying it, ask few questions, meet the right people. You expect people to do competitive analysis of the sector or the stock in which they're investing. So if I am employed with the asset management industry, I am most likely to triangulate the competition, the environment, the vendors and the customers and the industry dynamics and the profitability and the growth rates. I have some chance of being able to do it for the industry in which I work. What I find is that people are working in, let's say you're working in retail, okay, and you want to start direct equity investing. And the first thing they do is buy some chemical stock. Why? Because it's all over Twitter. Somebody is writing, chemical stocks are hot at a particular point in time. Doesn't mean you start there, because you're working in the retail industry. You have no idea of direct equity investing. So you start with the industry in which you are working. At least there is some chance that you will understand some Avenue Supermarts and Shopper Stop and whatever you will understand, right? So on your question that where should people start, for some reason, if you decide to do direct equity, you should start with the sector in which you are employed or which you have some affinity circle. Say somebody says my father was a distributor for Asian Paints. So okay, start with the paints industry. So that is the first thing. Second thing is that if you are somebody who ultimately direct equity investing is not everybody's cup of tea.
Correct.
Because most people when they invest in equity directly, what is important is that you make a portfolio. And I think 99% people don't understand what a portfolio
Portfolio
means.
is.
A portfolio is, like I say very often, portfolio is not a list of stocks. If you see in the last 3-4 years, what has happened is, in most people's portfolios, you will have, railway, PSU, defense, infra, energy, utilities. Those are the things you will have. If you look at a portfolio has an investment universe, it has a scheme of a document, it has a benchmark, it has some anchoring or some tethering to the market at large. But if you're holding railway, defense, PSU, infra, you're just holding what was hot in the last 3 years. That's not called a portfolio. That's just a list of stocks. And in the last 6 months, you have clearly seen it that a diversified mutual fund may have been down 12, 15, 16, 17%. A small cap fund may have been down 20%. But by and large, a lot of individual portfolios are down by about 40-50%. In fact, recently Bloomberg published a chart which I picked up, on X. Somebody had posted, but the source was Bloomberg. They published a chart which said that companies which have retail shareholders as the highest chunk of their shareholding, their stocks are down 34-35%. Companies which have domestic institutions as the largest chunk of shareholding were down some 20-25%, 25% or 30% in between that range. And companies which had FIIs as the largest chunk was down between 20-25%. So whether you take companies with a high FII or DII holding, they were down in the range of 20-30%. Most mutual fund portfolios, diversified funds, were in the range of 15%. But companies where the dominant chunk is retail shareholding were down about 35% on average, correct? So, what I feel is that people need to understand why they are investing, and they also need to understand, just linking your previous question, understand why you're investing and also understand what are your competencies. What you can do and what you cannot do.
बेसिकली आप बोल रहे हो कि आई हैव टू डू कंपटीशन एनालिसिस, पूरा स्टडी करना पड़ेगा, एंड आई थिंक most of the people are either they don't have time or they don't have
Yeah.
the technical skills to do all of that. Then is the direct equity even a right option for most people?
See, it's not the right option for most people. But I'm nearing 50 years now. And I've learned to see the world as it is rather than seeing the world as it should be. And actually, as you grow older, वही सबसे बड़ा change होता है. Because when you're young, you're idealistic. You see the world as it should be. Right? But when you grow older, you start seeing the world as it is actually. And the reality is that हम लोग कितना भी म्यूचुअल फंड सही है, SIP ये सब बोलेंगे, that's fine. The reality is that even today, direct equity is a bigger cult or a bigger asset class than mutual funds. And there is glaring statistics for that, right? If you see mutual funds, the number of unique mutual fund investors was say 6 crores. The number of unique, stock market investors, I think 12 to 13 crores.
12
right?
yeah,
12 crores. I think
13.
NSE said 12 crores.
Yeah.
The number of demat accounts is 19 crores, 190 million. The number of mutual fund folios must be, 12 crores or some such number, maybe 13, 14 crores. But I know that the number of SIPs are between 10 to 11 crores. The number of unique investors is 6 crores. So even today, right, and if you take the market capitalization, mutual funds must be about 10% of total stock market capitalization. But people who are non-promoter, non-institution, the guys, demat holders, if I'm not wrong, they must be 14 to 15% of the stock market capitalization. So, हम कितना भी कर लें, people investing directly is still a bigger phenomena than people buying mutual funds. I mean, over a number of years, कुछ चीज़ें change हुई हैं, but still people prefer to invest directly. तो अगर देखिए क्या है, जैसे regulator, हमारे जो SEBI है, their own data says that 91% of the traders, they lose money. लेकिन प्रॉब्लम क्या है कि भाई 100% ऑफ द पीपल थिंक दैट दे आर इन द अदर 9%. तो इसका सोल्यूशन नहीं है ना, right? So, in an ideal world, people should take professional help. They should be investing in a mutual fund. Even if you're doing direct equity, please pay a fee and get a registered advisor. All these options are there. But for some reason, when it comes to investing in stock market, ना लोगों को लगता है ये तो मैं कर सकता हूँ. तो मतलब उसका तो क्या सोल्यूशन है फिर?
You're correct. इस तरीके से everybody starts like this. वो start करते हैं and then eventually they realize नहीं, म्यूचुअल फंड भी अच्छा है, you should do it. But होता क्या है in this period, एक random collection of different investment हो जाता है, थोड़ा crypto, थोड़ा FD, थोड़ा so after a time, how to navigate, how to rebalance, how to structure your portfolio.
See, करना सब चाहिए. देखिए क्या है कि I never tell people anybody कि भाई ये मत करो वो मत करो. I expect that different people will have different routes to entering the capital market. Someone will start with FNO, someone will start with direct equity, some people will start with mutual funds, some SIP, right? And say you gave example of say cryptocurrency. Now the point is कि भाई हम अभी 50 साल का जो है वो कैसे 20 साल 21 साल का लड़का या लड़की को बोलेगा क्रिप्टो मत करो, कि बोले बस तुमको क्या मालूम है, सब इट्स न्यू. दैट्स अ फैक्ट that more than 100 years no currency has lasted. Right, I mean there was a point in time it was francs and pounds and US dollar, and now people are talking about US debt and the dollar depreciating, and alternate other currencies, emerging market currencies, gold, silver. So clearly crypto is also an alternate asset, and we don't have enough understanding to diss it completely. And on the other hand, what information we have is that it's lasted for 15, 16, 17 years now. For 17 years, people have been dissing it, correct? So there must be something which is driving it. So what if I don't understand? So I never tell anybody that don't do this. I just say that कि भाई if you don't understand it, then you're trying it out, you're experimenting, you're trying it out, and you're just getting a foot in the door. That okay, let me put a foot in the door in this. As it goes, maybe I will pick up some understanding, and the concept will evolve, right? So I never say no to anybody for anything. I feel that people should be more into areas which are regulated, which have track record, which are tried and tested, and where you can get some fundamental understanding of how it works. There will be many people who claim that they have fundamental understanding of crypto. There will be some who will say they have fundamental understanding of how gold and silver prices. Somebody might talk about commodities, somebody might talk about real estate. That doesn't mean everybody should do everything. There are multiple ways to go to heaven. You don't have to necessarily go your way or my way. Correct. So I think people should do more of what they understand rather than doing what everybody else is doing. And ultimately, if you grow your money 14-15% a year, see in 32 years, India's stock market compounded 14%. Like the Sensex and Nifty, long histories that they have compounded about 14% year on year, right? If you start post liberalization, 14% compounded. So the track record says that भाई if you कुछ नहीं करेगा तो 5 साल में market पैसा double करता है. That's a reasonable number. So I don't have to, if I see some asset appreciating, I don't have to capture returns in every form or format that it is available in the, वैसे तो वो जो नवी मुंबई में एयरपोर्ट बनने वाला है उसके पास ज़मीन का दाम भी बढ़ गया है, तो उधर नहीं था ना मेरा पैसा, राइट? अभी 2 साल में गोल्ड का दाम भी बढ़ गया है, तो अदर देन माई वाइफ तो गोल्ड नहीं था किसी के पास ना. बट ठीक है, आई एम मेकिंग मनी इन इक्विटी और इन सम अदर एसेट क्लास. So first is you do what you understand, and there are things which you don't understand but they're doing very well. Then you should be just trying it out or experimenting. You should not be like all in. I think that's the thing. And then see, because आपने allocation के बारे में पूछा, why I gave you the whole background is because भाई allocation तो तब होगा जब आप equitably allocate करेंगे और आपको सब समझ में आता है, right? भाई हमारे जैसे लोग को खाली equity समझ में आता है, तो या मे भी थोड़ा बहुत रियल एस्टेट समझ में आता है. सो एंड ये समझ में आता है कि भाई जब ये सब नहीं चलता है तो गोल्ड चलता है, राइट? सो वी शुड बी इन द एरियाज दैट वी अंडरस्टैंड.
Fair. So, couple of things you talked about. Sensex कुछ नहीं करेगा तो भी return देगा. So then the question that I want to ask is, could you talk a little bit about active funds and index funds? So can somebody, and maybe some basic of both of them, how they
Yeah, I
work?
mean that's a fair question because मतलब जब भी मैं ऐसा बोलते हैं कि भाई right from liberalization till now, say 32 financial years, it's a fact that Sensex itself has compounded about 14%. So which means that on an average, in every 5-year period, not literally, sometimes in 3 years, sometimes in 7 years, but on average, something which compounds 14% on average in 5 years, they should double the money. So it's a very obvious question that bhai, then why do you need all this stock picking and why should you do mutual funds and all? But at the same time, there is equally relevant history that there are enough number of mutual funds which in varying time frames they have actually outperformed the benchmark. So ultimately, it's a journey. You're trying to reach somewhere, and if you can, if you can take more luggage with you, take more people with you, or you can reach faster, or you can get upgraded to business class, why won't you opt for that, right? So it's true that the index itself does a great job because that's the intrinsic growth rate of the economy. I mean, our GDP grows 6.5% plus 5-6% inflation. So if the nominal growth itself is 11-12%, then the larger companies in the index will grow at that percent. But then you will always have some sectors, you will always have some stocks, you will always have private sector versus public sector, domestic versus exports, large cap versus small cap, defensive versus cyclical, unorganized moving to organized, unbranded moving to branded, right? There will always be some ideas or some opportunities which might help you to do better. And there are enough number of accomplished managers with the track record who, if they can get you a better return, why not? Correct. So there is a mathematical reason. And India as a country, I'll just give you a simple example. In last 15 years, we've gone from being a poor country to a lower middle class country. Now, I will not ask you your age, but if I take my age, I'll give you a simple example. In the late 90s, do you remember जैसे इंडिया में डेंटल प्रोडक्ट का एडवर्टाइजमेंट आता था? कोई है, आपको याद है कोई भी एडवर्टाइजमेंट डेंटल प्रोडक्ट का?
क्लोजअप का ऐड याद है मुझे.
तो लेट 90s में ना क्या ऐड आता था पता है? देयर इज़ अ टीचर, वो बच्चे लोग को पूछता है कि अरे राजू तुम्हारे दांत तो मोतियों जैसे चमक रहे हैं. हाँ, तो टीवी में क्या आता था, वो क्या बोलता है कि क्यों ना हो मास्टर जी, मैं लाल दंत मंजन इस्तेमाल करता हूँ। तो लेट 90s में ये ऐड आता था कि भाई मेहरबानी करके दातून और कोयला मत इस्तेमाल करो, कम से कम दंत मंजन इस्तेमाल करो। अभी 2025 में है हम, कौन सा ऐड आता है डेंटल प्रोडक्ट्स का?
चारकोल होना चाहिए उसमें,
इट सेज दैट कि भाई अगर आपने डेजर्ट खाया ना तो रात को और एक बार
ब्रश
ब्रश
करना
करो।
चाहिए.
That is the amount of transformation that has happened. And is it any surprise that FMCG companies have done very, very well in the past? May not be in the future. I'm not very bullish in the future. But is it any surprise that consumer companies have rewarded people in the past? Because you've gone from a situation where for crores of people you had to tell them for God's sake buy a Dant Manjan. And today you reached a situation where the penetration is such that you assume that everybody is brushing their teeth, and now if you
They have
want
to do
to
it twice.
grow you make them brush twice. And that is how consumer, right? You take another example, uh, when Maruti started in India, fully imported, right? Like today people are questioning what is the use, so what if Apple is assembling in India, what's the big deal? China में देखो पूरा का पूरा component के साथ बनता है, right? Now take an example of auto industry. In 1984 when Maruti came, it was fully imported off the ship, right? Over the number of years, what has happened now? If you check newspapers and archives and the internet, every 2 3 5 years you see the history, you will find how much proportion of Maruti got indigenized. I have seen it growing in my childhood. Maruti was imported from Japan off the ship, and over the number of years I have read that it's now 80% indigenized. At some point in time it was 60% indigenized. So today India is a hub for exporting automobiles and auto ancillaries. So what happens is that when a country goes from being, agricultural country to industrial or to services, when it goes from being a poor country to a lower middle class country, there are many sectors which grow faster at different points in time compared to the rest of the economy. Correct? If I tell you that IT services has grown faster than GDP at some points in time, if I tell you that in the last few years, for instance, electronics manufacturing has grown faster than our GDP, right? If I tell you that in the next 5 to 10 years I expect that luxury consumption to grow faster than the average consumption, there will be trends. We don't become a middle class country from being a poor country without any sectoral changes, correct? So there will always be opportunities. We are not yet the Western world, where in US if you want to make alpha, if you want to beat the benchmark, you have to keep an eye on AI, and you have to keep an eye on one of Mr. Musk's companies. In India, सेव भुजिया पोटैटो वेफर वाला जूता चप्पल रेस्टोरेंट, इसका आईपीओ आ रहा है अभी, राइट? पहले जब लोग खाना खाते थे तो अगर आप मुंबई में, दिल्ली में कहीं, मतलब गोरेगांव, मलाड, जोगेश्वरी, अंधेरी, every suburb outside the railway station had a restaurant or had some guy selling farsan and food. Today they have also got branded. Not naming names, a private equity guy is paying 85,000 crore market valuation for somebody selling you snacks and farsan. Why? Because it's become an industry which is branded and organized. And if somebody tells me that there are not enough ideas in India to be able to generate alpha, I think it's a misunderstanding. It's not an accurate assessment of where we are in our journey. So to sum it up, I'll just tell you that you don't worry about the index capturing the market even before the market has captured the economy. We have a long journey to go. So you must, there is a place for passive in the portfolio. It gives simplicity, no decision making, no complication. You just buy BSE 500, and for $100 you can buy BSE 500 every month and just sit on it. That is the way to do it. There's nothing wrong with it. But there will always be some opportunities and some people who will do better.
So talking about alpha and complication, moment we talk about active funds,
Yeah.
then the complication starts. We have small caps, mid caps, international funds, sectoral funds, and somebody was commenting in one of the podcasts that last 3 4 years people have invested in small caps
Yeah.
because they don't read fact sheets, they look at performance and
Mhm.
like that.
Yeah.
So two questions. One is इतने सारे funds में से how do we choose? Because my fundamental question is that people don't have unlimited money, right? कितना 30, 40, 50,000, 1 लाख उससे ज़्यादा तो नहीं है, तो उसमें divide करना है, तो how can somebody and choose these funds?
Yeah. So, personal finance or investing or money related matters, finance related matters, are very serious things. So I don't mean to take it casually. But whether you like it or not, at one level, these are consumer products also. And you don't have to buy everything that a supermarket stocks. And you don't have to buy everything out there. So to give you an example, I distinctly remember 2012, at some point in time I was making some strategy or some number I remember. I distinctly remember in end of 2012, the equity mutual fund industry was 1,79,000 or 1,80,000 crore. 2024 end, I think at the peak it must have been 46 lakh crores. So if the mutual fund equity mutual fund industry is gone up how many times? So 30 times or something?
30 times.
Right? Equity mutual fund industry, not 30 times, it's gone up say 25 times or whatever the number is. If equity mutual fund industry in 12 years has gone up 25 times, how can it go up without number of asset management companies, number of schemes, number of categories of schemes? Without this expanding, how can an industry start managing 46 lakh crores instead of 2 lakh crores? It can't be, right, that the same incumbents managing the same schemes. Well, that has also happened. I mean, there are some schemes which are a couple of thousand crores become 40,000 crores. That has also happened, but there's a limit to it, right? So I don't see any reason to criticize this because there is no industry which expands some 25, 30 times without number of players, number of categories and number of products expanding. Now within that, are some random useless products launched? Answer is yes. And because this is finance and money related, it's a bit more serious. I can't take it like any other consumer product. That is the reason why you need people like you talking. That is the reason why you need media, you need social media, you need investment advisors, you need distributors, you need wealth managers, chartered accountants, private bankers. So that is one side of the thing to keep in mind. And the second is what I already told you. You don't need to buy every product. Don't buy what you don't understand. Correct. But at the same time, if you ask me, like say we have banking and financial services fund, or say we have a healthcare fund. If you ask me, do you really think banking and financial services will outperform on an average the larger index or the economy? Answer is yes. It has done in the past. And I expect it to do prominently in the times to come. Take an example of healthcare. If you take a BSE 500 index, healthcare is 6% of the benchmark, right? And most people don't even have 6% of healthcare in the portfolio. But if you see US, one of the largest sectors is healthcare. One of the biggest spends for people is healthcare and related to that insurance. In India, if you take the broad index, insurance, I don't know, is not even some single percentage points. I mean, some peanuts. If you take healthcare, the entire sector is hardly 6% of the benchmark. So if you tell me that in my own portfolio, should I be overweight healthcare or not? Our diversified funds in healthcare have 2x the exposure compared to BSE 500. So we are basically bullish and overweight. Now, should I manage a separate healthcare fund or not? For enterprising investors, for investors who understand what I'm talking, we have 6 crore investors. I won't be surprised if 60,000 investors understand what I'm talking. Correct? So it's not a small number. So there is a healthcare fund which manages 300-400 crores and which will outperform our diversified funds on an average over a long period of time. It will go through ups and downs, but on average, I think that sector will outperform. So should I have such a fund or not? So it's like that. I mean, now on this basis, I wouldn't justify every fund that is out there, but I'm saying that there is a sound reason why it happens. And yes, that makes choices difficult. It's a well-known fact. Any product where there are excessive number of choices, decision making is difficult. Decisions come unstuck. Decisions lead to post-purchase regret. It happens. But there is a reason why it's there, and I think there is a way we will have to navigate.
Then ultimately, there's so many products out there, right? To me, then it makes so much sense to go through an advisor to help yourself. What is your view between the DIY, having an advisor, mutual fund, to guide you?
Yeah.
Because in fact, I'll ask it in a different way. So I consulted a couple of financial advisors and they restrict to index fund, flexi cap fund, and probably a mid cap fund. They don't advise anything.
Yeah.
So two questions here. One is, what is your view between DIY and this? And secondly, why, like, how to navigate if you're going to do DIY from this,
So, like I gave you the example, for a certain size of portfolio, at a certain point in time, it might be better to go with a distributor because that might turn out cheaper than shelling out a fee. At a certain scale, clearly a fee might be cheaper than going to a distributor. At a certain point in time, you might say that, okay, fee is there, but it's well worth it. Or the commission the distributor is earning is well worth it because, he's helping me, he or she is helping me navigate the whole thing. So that's all options are possible, and people need to weigh pros and cons and what works for them. Correct. Now coming to your other part, which is that some people recommend only index funds. But see, I feel that if you're an investment advisor or a mutual fund distributor, or for that matter, anybody advising anybody, I think the least thing you should be is dogmatic, right? Because you have to deal as per the customer's, investors' requirement. If you read Intelligent Investor, even Benjamin Graham in late 40s said something called an enterprising investor. When you ask me about sectoral funds, thematic funds, and the plethora of funds that are available, why did I give you example of, say, healthcare? I know 90% of the investors don't need to buy a thematic fund. But I also know, like I said, out of 6 crore, there will be 50, 60,000 people who understand what I'm talking. And they understand that, okay, it's possible that this particular thing will do very well. And when I go back and see all these index fund and flexi cap fund you are recommending to me, they are showing not even 3-4% exposure to healthcare. But I know that this is something which is set to grow faster. So I'm not a big fan of anybody being closed minded, very deterministic, very dogmatic, very set ideas. ये तो चलेगा ही, ये तो नहीं चलेगा. Because one of my other beliefs is that market का काम होता है. जो लोग बहुत ही clarity है ना जिसको बहुत life में, जो लोग बहुत certain है, बहुत पक्का है, market का काम ही है उनको wrong prove करने का. अगर सी मार्केट ऐसा चीज़ है कि भाई अगर आपने बोल देना कि ये पक्का नहीं होएगा तो मतलब आप मान के चलो कि पक्का होएगा. सी टिल लेट 2021 or late 2020 what people used to think पब्लिक सेक्टर में पैसा बनता नहीं है. आप याद करो लेट 2020 अर्ली 2021 में सोशल मीडिया पे किस चीज़ का मीम्स बनता था. कौन से कंपनी का मीम्स बनता था. नॉट अ रिकमेंडेशन, आई डोंट इवन डायरेक्टली ओन स्टॉक्स, बट कौन से कंपनी का मीम्स बनता था. अब याद करो.
आईटीसी का बनता था.
आईटीसी का बनता था. पब्लिक सेक्टर एंटरप्राइज का बनता था. देयर आर सम मैनेजर्स हु हैड ओवरवेट पीएसयू इन देयर पोर्टफोलियोज. दे वर अंडर परफॉर्मिंग फॉर 4-5 ईयर्स. सोशल मीडिया में लोग आके बोलते थे कि ये लोग को पता नहीं लोग कर क्या रहे हैं, क्या कचरा कंपनी खरीद के बैठे हैं. उसके बाद क्या हुआ 2021 से लेकर 2024 में खाली आईटीसी चला और पीएसयू चला. अच्छा, अभी किसका मीम्स बन रहा है. अभी बड़े बड़े बैंक्स का मीम्स बन रहा है.
करेक्ट.
जब मार्केट गिरा तो वो सब गिरा ही नहीं. अभी वही सब बड़ा बड़ा बैंक्स आर द आउट परफॉर्मर. सो if you know nothing about stock market, at least one thing you should know, that don't be dogmatic and don't be fixated in your views. Because today if you say I will only buy index funds, right? Today what the index is showing you is what things have happened till now and whatever is in public knowledge about what is going to happen in future. But if there is somebody who has a vision that XYZ is not fully priced in, which is what I call an enterprising investor, then they should be allowed to participate in it. And anybody who's an advisor should never be dogmatic. And same with the investor should not be dogmatic. That's the whole point.
Speaking about alpha, you also work on PMS. So is the risk involved or the extra alpha that PMS can give, is the risk worth it? और आप इसको इस तरीके से आंसर कर सकते हो. Let's say I have somehow managed 70-80 lakh rupees.
Yeah.
Is it for me? PMS is for me.
Not necessary. See, first of all, if in a portfolio management service itself, I can have we don't manage whether it's our portfolio management service or mutual fund. Anything which we do, which can be called high risk, high return or relatively risky, we do in AIFs. Say, I'll give you an example. We run all the mutual funds, we run all the PMS, but when it comes to small cap or micro cap, we don't have any open-ended fund, no mutual fund, no PMS. The only form and format in which we do small cap, micro cap, or even SME, we actually do only in close-ended format, which is an AIF. Why? Because we want to calibrate the inflow. We want to calibrate the outflow. We don't want anybody coming in and coming out because we are essentially buying illiquid stuff or highly cyclical stuff. So what happens is that if you run a PMS, which has 15 stocks and they are all small cap and mid cap, that is a different thing. But if you run a PMS, which is a multi cap diversified fund, portfolio, different thing. So first of all, there's no such thing that a PMS must outperform a mutual fund.
Okay.
Right? Because there can be a mutual fund with 20 small cap stocks, which sometimes give 20% alpha and sometimes give -20. कभी जन्नत में कभी जहन्नुम में, तो कभी कभी तो आगे आएगा ना. But on the other hand, instead of mutual fund, I may be running a PMS and it may be diversified 60% large cap, some mid cap, some small cap, right? So there's no such rule that it'll outperform. But yes, potential is there in the sense that when we run a diversified PMS, compare it with a diversified mutual fund, or you compare a multi-cap PMS with a multi-cap mutual fund. What will happen in the mutual fund? The regulator will dictate. You have to have daily liquidity. You have to have, a fixed fee. The definition of large cap is top 100 stocks. Definition of mid cap is next 150. Definition of small cap is the next 250. And you need 25% in each to be called a multi cap. So what happens is, because mutual funds are mass retail products, minimum is $100. So they are standardized. And almost like a ready reckoner, everybody will be able to understand what it means when I say multi cap. In a PMS, a fund manager has a huge amount of leeway. Right? There is no set definition of what is large cap, mid cap, small cap. Instead of fixed fee, you can have performance linked fee. And if you jog back to our earlier part of our conversation, people holding direct equity is a much bigger phenomena than people owning mutual funds even now. So all those people who are holding equity directly in their demat accounts, who are used to seeing stocks being bought and sold, they'll prefer to engage a PMS manager rather than going to a mutual fund. Like a lot of people tell me, you should not do PMS because, in a mutual fund, it's a trust and there is no tax. If you do PMS, there is tax. If the whole world revolved around tax, then why anybody would directly buy and sell equity? If the whole world revolved around tax, then why would anybody trade FNO? उसमें तो सबसे ज़्यादा tax है. So, the whole world doesn't revolve around the such simplistic explanations of why one product is superior and one is inferior. There are layers and layers and nuances, and there are people who prefer one over the other, right? And like any other industry, we cater to a wider base of requirements. Like, of course, we are not a supermarket. We do only equity. Within equity, mutual funds, we have a wide array. PMS, we might have a couple of them. AIF, like I said, we do only unlisted, pre-IPO or small cap, micro cap. So there is a reason or a logic behind everything. You just need the right client and the right advisor to pick the right things.
There is another favorite question of mine, because internet now there is a trend to say, real estate is bad. You should not buy a house to live. So what is your opinion there? And I want to ask you specifically, saying that for a money manager, his money gets blocked if someone is investing in real estate. Right? And you are a money manager. So therefore I'm asking you, what is your view on?
जो म्यूचुअल फंड इंडस्ट्री में जो लोग काम करते हैं ना, उनका दो खराब आदत है. एक, वो सबको बोलते हैं डायरेक्ट इक्विटी मत करो, और दूसरा बोलते हैं कि घर मत खरीदो. तो दैट इज़ वेयर आई थिंक व्हाट यू सेड, दिस यू आर अ मनी मैनेजर वाला, योर क्वेश्चन आपका लाजमी है, बिकॉज यू विल थिंक कि भाई यू आर अ मनी मैनेजर, सो यू विल एक्सपेक्ट एवरीबडी टू पुट ऑल देयर मनी इन म्यूचुअल फंड्स. बट ऐसा होता नहीं है, राइट? Like I said, people should, if you want to invest in direct equity, you do it. You will learn. सबका अपना अपना एक्सपीरियंस है ना, करेक्ट? तो अभी कुछ लोग चाय में बिस्किट डुबो के ही खाते हैं, तो क्या कर सकते हैं उसका, करेक्ट? तो सबका अपना अपना एक्सपीरियंस है. सो व्हेन इट कम्स टू डायरेक्ट इक्विटी ऑल्सो, एज अ म्यूचुअल फंड का IMI से नहीं करना चाहिए, बट दैट्स नॉट राइट. एक्चुअली करना चाहिए, तो आप सीखोगे. अगर सीख गए और हमारे से अच्छा किया तो ग्रेट फॉर यू. That's why, in fact, even I said, you start with the industry you understand. Don't buy chemical stock because everybody is buying chemical stock, right? Now, so I don't think that everybody should put all their money in mutual fund. That's not how the world works. People will have their own preference. They'll have their own competencies. They have their own expectations, correct? I always tell people that even if you are fully into mutual funds, थोड़ा आप ट्राई करो, टेस्ट करो, आपको समझ में आएगा. कम से कम इतना तो समझ में आएगा हमारा काम बहुत मुश्किल है, राइट? नाउ कमिंग टू रियल एस्टेट, लाइक आपने बोला कि पीपल से, बट अगर आप गौर से देखो तो जब से लोगों ने बोलना एक्चुअली थोड़ा कम कर दिया, क्योंकि जब से लोग जोर जोर से बोलने लगे ना कि रियल एस्टेट में कुछ होता नहीं है, उसके बाद कोविड हुआ, वहाँ से तो सब दाम डबल हो गया है. लाइक आई सेड, गोरेगांव, आप पता करो रियल एस्टेट इन गोरेगांव फॉर एग्जांपल, राइमिंग है, गुड़गांव भी पता कर लो। करेक्ट। तो आप गोरेगांव हो या गुड़गांव हो या आप जो भी, देखिए इवन इन द स्टॉक मार्केट ना, some stocks have done well and some stocks haven't done well. Some sectors outperform, some underperform. तो वैसे रियल एस्टेट में भी होएगा। अगर आप 2016 में गोरेगांव में आते और 2022 में हिसाब मांगते तो ज़ीरो रिटर्न होता। आप 2020 में आते और 2022 में हिसाब मांगते तो यू वुड हैव बीन अप 60%। करेक्ट। सो फर्स्ट इज दैट आई डोंट थिंक देयर शुड बी एनी सेट रूल्स. माई रूल इज़ वेरी सिंपल. एट सम पॉइंट इन टाइम ऑफ योर लाइफ, if you are going to own a house, then the faster you do it, the better. And if you are in the rent versus buy debate, if you are very clearly that I'm going to rent, then you stay on rent. But at see क्या है, अगर आप कभी न कभी खरीदने वाले हो ना, then it's better that the earlier you get a foot in the door, it is better. The other thing why I sometimes I'm in favor of buying a house as a youngster, I bought my first house when I was 27. Why I was in favor or why I think it was not a bad decision that time is because how does a youngster build a balance sheet यार, मतलब मैं नेटवर्थ कैसे बनाएगा? मेरे को थोड़ी कोई अगर मैं बैंक में या कहीं जाके किसी को बोलूँगा कि भाई यू लेंड मी सम मनी, आई वांट टू बाय स्टॉक्स, लेंड मी सम मनी, आई वांट टू पुट मनी इन अ म्यूचुअल फंड, भगा देगा वो, क्या बात कर रहा है. बट एज अ 27-year-old द हाउस वॉज 80 lakh rupees. I put 6-7 lakh rupees. That time 80. See now the rule is that you have to put 20%, bank will put 80%. 20 साल पहले वो रूल भी नहीं था, राइट. सो आई पुट 10%, द बैंक पुट 90%, राइट. फिर वो घर का दाम 7 साल में 2.5 times हो गया. तो आप समझो, राइट. आई हैड 10%, मतलब 100 का वैल्यू 250 हुआ. तो आप गिनो मेरा 10 का कितना हुआ. 10 plus whatever I have paid as EMI and stamp duty registration. So, like I said earlier, you should never be dogmatic. It depends when you buy, where you buy, आपका पर्पस क्या है. अगर आपने डिसाइड कर लिया कि मैं तो कभी घर नहीं खरीदेगा, आई एम क्लियरली ऑन द रेंट साइड, तो रहो रेंट पे, देन देयर इज नो डिबेट, राइट. आई मीन देन इट्स वेरी क्लियर.
देयर इज एन इमोशनल एस्पेक्ट दैट पीपल डोंट कंसीडर ना. आपने 15 करोड़ का इक्विटी पोर्टफोलियो बना लिया, लेकिन घर नहीं है, तो आप व्हेन यू आर 60-70 आर यू गोइंग टू कीप शिफ्टिंग योर हाउसेस.
That's also you know convenience, emotion, family. So from my answer you can get a drift that I am in the buy camp, but I can relate to people. In a city like Mumbai or a city like Gurgaon or Delhi, you can have like 80% of my net worth is my house. That also, मतलब क्या घर खा तो नहीं सकते ना, मतलब what will you do with it, right? You can't, if you want to go to Switzerland, you can't sell like half a room to someone, right? So I understand that. So it depends where you are in your stage of life, you know, where you are living. Certain cases it might be better to rent. Certain cases, I think, like I said, if you're going to buy, sooner you buy, it's better. I think young people also get worried that if I buy a house in a particular city or a particular location, I will get stuck there. If I buy a house on a EMI, then you know the criticality of my job and what I need to tolerate in corporate life, that really becomes a pain. So I can completely relate to people who don't want to buy a house, but I've given you my opinion.
So we'll move to slightly broader market thing. I just saw an interview of Jack Ma yesterday, and he says that don't worry like a finance minister or a prime minister. Worry about what you have to worry about. So
Brilliant, yeah.
So is the same thing. Like, I'm not a fund manager. So as an investor, what are the things I have to look at when market? So what do I do? मेरा 5,000 रुपए का SIP चल रहा है, US का डॉलर ऊपर नीचे हो रहा है. Should I really be worried about?
There was, you know, when the US presidential election was happening. I mean, you see, there is no right answer for this, because at one level we all need to understand politics and we all need to understand what is happening in the world. But at one level, you know, like the joke I read, somebody had something to say about the US election. This was on X, where somebody had like a long rant on US election, and then somebody replied to him, "भाई तू भाईंदर में रहता है, तेरे को क्या है?" You know? So ऐसा भी होता है. I think that was rude, but just you know, as a joke
No,
or a
so the
meme
idea
sometimes
is
comes.
कि as a retail investor with little money in the market, how should I look at market? How do I manage my emotion? ऊपर नीचे जाता है, क्या सोचना चाहिए मुझे?
नहीं, so emotion ही मेन है. उसमें तो कोई डाउट नहीं है. See, there is one of the myths about investments, one of the myths about personal finance, one of the myths about stock markets and mutual funds. The myth is that कि भाई, you know, you need to be like a expert. Maths आना चाहिए आपको. You need to be a financial wizard, right? वो थोड़ा ओवरस्टेटेड है. बिकॉज मैं कितनी बार लोगों को समझाता हूँ कि भाई पिछले 20 साल में इकोनॉमिक्स का नोबेल प्राइज़ भी 2 बार ऐसे लोग को दिया है जो ह्यूमन साइकोलॉजी स्टडी करते हैं, राइट. तो क्यों दिया होगा? क्योंकि स्टॉक मार्केट इज़ द लॉन्गेस्ट रनिंग लाइव एक्सपेरिमेंट टू स्टडी ह्यूमन बिहेवियर एक्चुअली, that how do people react or how do people respond when their emotions are called into question. See, Mr. Buffett said, be greedy when others are fearful, be fearful when others are greedy. That is a statement. No, you expect him to talk about maths. He's not talking about maths. He's talking about controlling your psychology. The key word in that statement is the others. कि भाई आप others से हटके कैसे रहते हैं, आप अपना थोड़ा contrarian thinking, थोड़ा different thinking, standing apart from the crowd. सो सबसे बड़ा मिथ तो यही है कि इट्स मोर इम्पॉर्टेंट दैट यू ट्रैक यूएस इलेक्शन, यू शुड हैव अ व्यू ऑन वेदर आरबीआई विल कट रेट्स और नॉट. अच्छा है, सीखो समझो, बट in your ultimate success, that is not going to be the overwhelming determinant of whether you were a successful investor, whether you met your goals or not. Whether you're a successful investor, whether you met your goals or not, उसका overwhelming determinant will be कि मार्च 2020 में आप खरीद रहे थे कि आप भी अदर्स के साथ थे. That will be the biggest determinant, right? So you're absolutely right in asking that people spend a lot of time forecasting macroeconomics. इलेक्शन में क्या होएगा, एनडीए की सरकार कंटिन्यू करेगी कि दूसरी सरकार आएगी, ऐसा सब ना 2024 में डर गए थे लोग. सो उस पर बहुत टाइम डालते हैं लोग. बट लंबे अरसे में, जैसा ऑलरेडी वी सेड कि भाई हर 5 साल में तो मार्केट ही पैसा डबल कर देता है. वो 5 साल में तो इधर पोखरान में अनफॉर्चुनेटली एक प्रधानमंत्री का असैसिनेशन हो गया, पोखरान में न्यूक्लियर ब्लास्ट हो गया, 4 तरीके का गवर्नमेंट चेंज हो गया, राइट विंग, लेफ्ट विंग, कोएलिशन, सब कुछ हो गया, कोविड हो गया, उधर वर्ल्ड ट्रेड सेंटर ब्लास्ट हो गया. ये सब करने के बाद 14% कंपाउंडेड है. तो अब आप देख लोगे आपको कितना टाइम डालना है अपना प्लानिंग पे और कितना टाइम डालना है ग्लोबल अफेयर्स पे.
So, what is one thing that you would like to tell investors because of which they should trust and say mutual fund actually सही है? What is the reason for them to believe?
बट एक्चुअली इफ़ यू आस्क मी, आप पिछले 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 साल का हिस्ट्री निकाल लो ना. आई मीन इन आवर कंट्री at one end, people have lost money with plantation schemes, with some NBFCs. People have lost money with unregulated schemes. It's quite sad that our country has a history of scams also, like many other countries. It's not something new. So, myriad set of ways, unfortunately, people have lost money by investing. But there's no mutual fund where people have lost money. I mean, of course, there are some mutual funds which do better than the others, some which do better than peers, some which do better than benchmarks, some which do worse off. But give me an example where people have lost money. Like I'll give you an example. In the late 90s, when I started my career, there was now not naming names, but there was a company, financial group from Calcutta, which had an NBFC, which had a mutual fund, right? The NBFC went bust, but the mutual fund was a trust, and that was liquidated and money was refunded. Even recently, there is a very, very large, promoter and a large financial group which was having a continuing row with the regulator for many, many years. That, who are your depositors, find them, return the money. They had a mutual fund also. What happened to the mutual fund? It was in a trust. They refunded the money, right? Mutual funds from time to time may perform, outperform, underperform. You can question some decisions. You can say that why, when the market has fallen, why 10 rupees has become 8 rupees. You can ask all kinds of questions on performance. But the legal structure is such, the regulation is such that you can't lose money for, reasons of what typically happens, malintent and those kinds of things. Sometimes something comes out in the regulator says that, okay, XYZ, some front running has happened, etc. Over the number of years, the regulation and the technology and the surveillance has become so strong. That is why it has started to surface and getting nipped in the bud. That is good, correct? So I think if you ask me, the most robust structure, even banks have gone under. People have lost money with deposits in banks. म्यूचुअल फंड में 10 का एन ए वी 8 होता है, 8 का एन ए वी 12 होता है. ये सब ऊंच नीच होता है, पैसा ज़ीरो नहीं होता है, राइट? सो व्हाट आई फील इज़ दैट there is no reason for me as a professional to have any doubt on what I'm offering, right? One is our intent is clear, we have competency, and third is the regulation, technology and surveillance is of the highest order. So I see there is one basic rule. If you're a businessman or a salesman, let's say I'm selling something to you, there is one rule of selling. Don't ever become salesman for a product which you cannot sell to your grandmother. वो clarity है. I know my family's money, my money, everybody's money is in our fund, right? And I don't know how many of your watchers will know we are the only country in the world where there's a regulation that as a mutual fund professional, however much money I earn, maybe salary, bonus, variable pay, whatever it is, obviously first we pay tax. 20% of the post tax income is compulsorily invested in my own funds, and it is not accessible to me for at least 3 years. So which industry is there where all the professionals who are managing the money, they have to first deposit 20% of their own salary into the funds and not even access it for 3 years? मतलब वो 3 साल में, if there's no misdemeanor, there's nothing went wrong, you've not done anything, then after 3 years you can access that money. So I think the regulation and track record is of a very high order.
Okay, I shall move slightly away from the finance questions. As a CEO, you must be getting a lot of feedback, inputs. What is your mental framework to think clearly and make decisions? It will help in general, and it will also can be used, while you decide for your investments.
See, I think very, very difficult question. But when you make decisions, for example, 2, 3 things are there. First is that I want to be very, very clear that there's nothing which is gray in terms of ethics or regulation. That is the first thing, correct? And then all the business related compulsions or business related decisions or considerations, let me say. So, business related considerations or, priorities will come later. First is it should be on the right side of ethics and regulation. I think that is the. Otherwise, you can't do this job. Like I've been doing the same job for 25 years. I have to meet the same people, whether it is the media, the distributors, customers, institutions, peers, regulator. You have to deal with the same people day in, day out for so many years. And I have to do this for another 20 years. So I think that is the first thing. Otherwise, there are no set ethics regulation. The other thing is obviously we have to do things which give good customer experience. So I'll give you an example. In off late there will be a lot of debate about investing in small cap funds. There's so much money has gone into small cap. Those SIPs will not give returns. Now it is down 20%. सी ऐसा है कि भाई वो सब पैसा लेने के पहले सोचो. पैसा लेने के बाद मत बोलो कि अभी पैसा ऊपर के लेवल में आया, अभी नीचे के लेवल में ये हो जाएगा, वो हो जाएगा. So we don't have a small cap fund. I told you already, we manage a small cap only in a AIF, not in an open-ended fund.
इतना सारा जो इनपुट आता है, why I asked you this, because you're CEO, you get inputs from everywhere. In general, if somebody has getting feedback, multiple information, how does he keep his mental state?
So वो तो बहुत बेसिक है ना, सबका सुनने का और जो अपने को ठीक लगता है वो करने का. Otherwise तो there is no way to move forward. And I'm paid to use my brain, right? At the same time, I should be a good listener, and I have to be open-minded. I have to be a good listener. But ultimately, I am paid for my conviction. Correct. Nothing can happen on borrowed conviction. So I operate from my conviction. That is very clear. And I work hard. I expect everybody to work hard. That is the thing. I mean, no, not work hard meaning 9 to 5, but work hard in the truest sense. That work hard, play hard. That type of work hard, I mean.
Ashish, a wonderful conversation. Before we conclude, I want to ask you, where do you see the industry in 10 years for investors, for professionals working in the industry, with the background of how AI is moving so fast, how things will change?
First of all, we all need to, now I am actually, whether it is my email systems, whether it is my Microsoft Office, for example, I've started installing AI tools, not because I'm knowledgeable about it, but because I want to experience it firsthand. Correct. Technology all over in all these years, my learning is that ultimately technology has only moved jobs, moved economies, and moved people forward. So not to be seen as a threat, because there's a lot of doomsday prophecy about AI which is happening. It's not to be seen as a threat. I think the faster we learn to adapt to make it a tool of efficiency, a tool of removing drudgery and doing more value-added work, right? Any which way, I feel that in a lot of cases organizations, a lot of people in a lot of organizations, including me, sometimes we all operate one or two levels below which we should be operating. Correct? Like I find that, if there are reviews or if there are meetings, so many people are just sifting through data, reading, like, for example, if there is a review, I don't like to be in a review where people are putting huge Excel spreadsheets and, doling out data. I mean, वो तो पढ़ के आओ यार. We are here to discuss what is in the data. So what happens is with AI, with advanced technological tools, I think a lot of that drudgery will go out, right? Because you will get decision making criteria rather than reams and reams of. That is what Excel does. So thankfully, we will move away from those kinds of things and we will talk more valuable, more outcome oriented stuff. So I am looking forward to more adaptation. I don't think that we have done much yet, but looking forward to more adaptation. And if you really ask me, because our industry is so much about numbers and there is just unlimited data out there, right? So I think it's going to be a great advantage. If you see the industry itself, I think, look, one of the things I've seen is that people keep forecasting. For 20 years, I'm hearing that India will be a middle class country, India will be a superpower, it will be the largest economy, and we will have a demographic dividend, and all these things you've been hearing. When it is actually upon us and when it is happening, we are not able to recognize it, right? So I feel that next 15, 20 years, people who are investors today, say somebody is 25 years old today, they are going to be, I mean, I have said it before, they are going to be our richest generation, right? In my, people of my generation, a lot of us were not as educated. Some of, like I am lucky, for example, but people of my generation didn't see the India what today's people are seeing. It was not that India at all, right? When I was a youngster, there were scams and there were riots and there were so many challenges. I mean, we traveled a long distance in last 15, 20 years. You see sportsmen, sportswomen, youngsters. You see how India is conducting itself in global affairs, in geopolitics. You see how we are seen as a country and as a market. It's a different country, it's a different world. So, people who are young today, their investment journey will actually coincide with India being a poor country to becoming a middle class country. And they are the ones who, in large numbers, will participate in that wealth creation. Correct. So, there's a lot to look forward to where I think as a country, as a bunch of people, we are in our best, we are in our prime. The best is yet to come. So there is every reason to be very, very constructive and very bullish.
Okay. Thank you, Aashish. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Nice
Thanks.
talking to you.